You're listening to the Cantina Cast, your home for thought-provoking Star Wars talk. Join Adler and Jonesy in breaking down the latest news, trailers, movies, and of course, your favorite characters from a galaxy far, far away.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Cantina Cast. My name is Albert Padilla, and this is episode 638. So after the better part of 148 days now and counting, we finally have the full-length, full-blown trailer for The Mandalorian Grogu, and we're here to break everything down, get into all the details, and speculate, like I said on social media, recklessly about things that we can maybe expect to see as a result. And joining me with me is Chris. Chris, thank you so much for being here tonight, of course, as always. Hey, what do you think so far about the trailer? I mean, this is it's kind of a big deal. We were talking about it a couple weeks ago. I thought it would be last week. It turns out to be this week. I was off a couple days, but hey, whatever. How do you doing, man?
Hey, I'm doing well, and I'm excited. I had to keep in a lot of my emotions when I first saw the trailer because I was like in a place where I really couldn't be loud. But no, I really liked what this trailer showed us. I think it gave us enough hints to let us know, give us an idea of what to expect out of this movie, but they didn't show the whole thing. And a lot of what I saw in this trailer, it took me back to old school Star Wars. And that's what the feeling that I wanted to get out of this trailer. And it exactly hit that spot. So I'm excited and I can't wait for May 22nd.
Yeah. And we'll talk more here in just a second about kind of our initial thoughts and all that stuff before we get into the actual breakdown. But first off, I want to kick things off by saying thank you, first off, foremost, to all of our Patreon members. Thank you for everyone at every level, even the free members. Thank you guys so much. It means a lot to us and it definitely helps keep the proverbial lights on. But a special thank you to are now part of the tribe members: Alex, Danny, Dante, Daz, I've got a Brad feeling, Jackson, Jacob, Josh, Mike Borda, and Paisley, who's with us in the live chat tonight. Paisley, thank you so much for your patience. I'm sorry I've left you off on there. It was a clerical mistake on my part, so I will take full responsibility, but at least I had you in the credits, so I'm sorry about that. But Paisley's here, and she's been here for over a few months now, so thank you for joining. Rita Reborn, Sharkman Dan, and Uncle Leon, and then our Delusions of Grandeur members, which is our highest tier, and that is Now This Is Rod Racing, Steve, and Rob. If you're interested in Patreon, you can scan the QR code in the corner of this screen and sign up for as little as $2, and we've got a bunch of special shows that we do exclusively for Patreon members, and there's going to be a lot more to come, especially as we get further and further into the release of The Mandalorian and Grogu. That's going to be a lot of fun to do. So a couple things very briefly. As far as programming notes, this Sunday, Chris and I will be back to do a way station. So we've been collecting a lot of different stuff from the news, right? That's been happening over the last few weeks now. And so we want to bundle all that up. So that'll be a Patreon exclusive. We'll talk about maybe this a little bit more, but then some of the other stuff like Galactic Racer is something that I definitely want to sink my teeth into and really kind of talk about. Super excited about where that game's going. But that'll be Sunday night, 9 p.m. for Patreon members. If you're part of the video tier, you'll get to watch that. The audio will release just shortly after that. And then I've got a special plug. I will be on Star Wars Reactions. That's a show that's coming up on Thursday. I'm not sure if we're recording that live or not, but as soon as we're done recording it and it's made available publicly, I will link that out. But Aaron and I think it's Dave over there are really great guys. They're friends of the shows, and they've asked me to come on and talk about, well, guess what? The Mandalorian and Grogu. So I'll be talking about it all over again there as well. So that'll be a lot of fun to do. Okay, let's get into this because honestly, there's so much to discuss in this breakdown. So do you have any other additional kind of initial thoughts, impressions? I've got my own here, but I want to make sure you got your say in before we actually get down to the frame by frame breakdown of this thing.
Well, the one thing that I really dug about the trailer is again, I explained how excited I am, and I explained how it made me feel like I was watching old school Star Wars again, which, guys like me who grew up with the original trilogy kind of yearn for, in today's age. Even though I love all of Star Wars, it's nice to go back to, when it was introduced to you, you felt like, and you were a kid and you kind of feel like a kid, all those emotions. But what I loved is that we got some teases for characters that we didn't think we were going to see, and they actually showed up. So that was also a big, a big surprise to see. So that added to the excitement of watching that trailer.
Yeah. 100%. Like it was. So here are my initial thoughts. Number one, I enjoyed the amount of action that was in this trailer. It was very action oriented. There was not a lot on the plot. I'll come back to in a second because I don't necessarily think that's necessarily a criticism of mine. as much as it is an observation, but very action oriented. It hit me with all the feels, some of the member berries that were there. It certainly set the tone for what this movie is going to be about, which just seems like a lot of high energy, a lot of fun, a lot of gags and comic relief, and the baby. I mean, it's everything that we loved about the television series. The only thing I would say that I haven't really seen just yet, and I hope this gets played out more, is just that, what really attracted me to this show from season one was the father-son relationship, right? And how that kind of matured over time. And they kind of stepped away from that for a little bit and they kind of came back to it. So I'm interested to see if that really becomes a focal point narratively for this story, rather than just, oh, it's, we're going around and taking down bounties left and right. Right. So we'll see how that goes. But lots and lots of aliens, which I love. Anytime there's a whole bunch of aliens in Star Wars, I think that's always a good thing. There's been other television shows and maybe even some movies that didn't really go that far with it, but man, there's just no stopping, Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau. It's just, again, it's like them playing with their action figures circa 1978. So excited to see all that. I love the fact that we got Zeb back. You guys know, if you follow this show, I'm a massive Star Wars Rebels fan. So, being able to see Zeb, and I mean, we didn't get a whole lot of them. We've seen some stuff already from like the D23, the sneak peek as well, had some stuff in there, but this was certainly a new shot where he says, I like him, or I like this kid. That was really fun to see. So we'll see how that goes out, and how he comes to life coming off the animated series. Pedro's face was another observation, right? They kind of just literally pulled the Band-Aid off, ripped the Band-Aid off, if you will, and said, look, he's here. He's going to be here. There's been a lot of talk, a lot of controversy about whether or not he would show up, whether or not he would actually be a part of this movie and just kind of do voice acting. He definitely looks to be a part of it. We'll see how long he keeps that mask on, and if that becomes kind of a contentious point storyline for him as well, whether or not to keep it on or off, or where does he lie with the rules and the regulations that the Bandos have versus what he's trying to do on his own with Grogu. All of that I think will get probably teased out in here. And then I think some of the just questions like I had as I was watching it, I didn't really get a good sense of who the antagonist is. I know I've seen rumors that Embo is the antagonist. I don't see how Embo, based on what I've seen so far, I don't know how he carries the movie as the antagonist throughout all of this. I think he is an antagonistic character in the sense that he's probably the one that brings in Mando and Grogu. But beyond that, I don't see how he becomes the full big bad, right? It seems like right now, if anybody, it's probably the twins, but I don't know. We'll see. There's more on that as well a little bit later. And then the last thing, two other things I should say. I love the fact that we got a new poster. That was kind of cool and a little bit unexpected since we had just gotten a poster. It wasn't that long ago. So they've really kind of done a couple of these. I was going to pull up the poster so I could show that, and I don't think I'm going to click the right thing here in time. So I'm not going to do that. But there is a new poster out. It's cute. Mando and Grogu. Grogu's on the back, and it says coming May 22nd. That was really fun. And then the one thing that just kind of floored me and blew me away, and I was all over this on social media, was Martin Scorsese doing a voice acting or doing voiceover for what I think is a character named Hugo, an Ardinian, which is that race that we saw in Han Solo, or the Solo Star Wars story. That was really unexpected. I don't know how. I mean, it had to be Jon Favreau that talked him into it. I think they've got a good relationship there. But yeah, super unexpected, and just one of my favorite directors of all time. I mean, I think he's done just some amazing work. He's right up there with Spielberg for me. So on a personal level, the fact that he's, I never thought he would be a part of Star Wars, and yet here he is lending his voice to this potential character named Hugo. So those are kind of some, I don't know, initial thoughts, things that were kind of going on in my head, but we can certainly get into this if there's anything else, or you want to add to any of that. We can get right into the actual breakdown.
Well, just to touch on a couple of points that you brought up, you talked about the father and son dynamic that Grogu and Din have. You're right. It's kind of been left out of the previous content that we've seen around this movie. But I think really, I mean, and you're a dad, I'm a dad. I think it kind of hit hard for me. That was one of the highly emotional parts of the trailer, where he's like, he's going to outlive me, and I'm not going to be around to protect him forever, and that's something that most all dads should feel. You have all that anxiety about not being there for your kid and protecting your kid. So that kind of hit me over the feels a little bit. And then as far as Hugo and that being Martin Scorsese's character, I think he's trying to. It's cool that he's there, because like you, that was not on my bingo card. Right. That Martin Scorsese, the acclaimed director Martin Scorsese, is going to voice a Star Wars character. But a couple of years ago, he made some comments about Marvel movies, and he kind of got some flack for it. Maybe this is his way of like easing those tensions a little bit.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. We'll see. I forgot about that. Yeah, he got in a lot of water. At least he was taking it on the chin from a lot of people because he was dogging the Marvel movies. But maybe Star Wars is different to him.
I think he was saying that those kind of movies are not cinema.
Right. Yeah.
And now you see
absolute cinema.
Absolute cinema. Exactly. Now you see the memes going around with him as Hugo saying absolute cinema.
I haven't seen those yet, but yeah. That's awesome that they've already gotten there. Okay, well, enough jibba jabba. Let's get into the trailer breakdown. So I didn't cue this up in time, so I'm gonna try to fumble through getting this set up here. I'm gonna share my screen. We actually have the trailer. We're gonna go. I don't know. I mean, we'll go pretty much frame by frame, I guess, if we need to here. But yeah, that'll be. Let me pull this up here, and let's get us back on here. I mean, not that you really need to see us, but we're here. Okay. All right, so here is the first shot. Now, first off, I posted a lot of stuff today on social media, but the minute I saw this, I was like, holy crap, it's The Force Awakens. Holy crap, it is Apocalypse Now. Fitting that we would get this right after, rest in peace, Robert Duvall just passed, who was one of the cast members of Apocalypse Now, one of my favorite movies of all time, really. It's just an amazing piece of work, but love this sunset. I mean, it's just beautiful here to see, and the dichotomy, I guess, or the juxtaposition between getting X-Wings versus the TIE fighters that we got in The Force Awakens. And for anybody that's wondering, that shot from The Force Awakens that was released during the international trailer that came out when The Force Awakens came out. And I remember when that trailer came out and seeing that shot, we hadn't seen it yet, right? That was we'd see it in the movie, but that was our first shot of it. And I thought, wow, they got a much cooler trailer just because of this one shot. So I posted that I'll never get tired of seeing the silhouettes of Star Wars ships, with a sun setting. But yeah, this looks really great. Yeah. And the other part of this too. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was saying I did a trailer reaction video. And when I first saw that, I was like, oh my God, that's beautiful. Now, obviously we saw it the day before for the teaser for the trailer, but to see it just finish the entire scene that was part of the trailer, that it was just beautiful. Again, touching on the emotions that I have being an original trilogy guy. X-Wing fighters, my favorite Star Wars ship. To see them in the silhouette like that, I think you have the TIE fighters in The Force Awakens, and now you have the X-Wings and Y-Wings here in The Mandalorian and Grogu. They're perfect bookends, for this saga, this timeline in this saga. I think it's great.
Yep. And this shot here, you've got a X-Wing that's just about to land. You've also got an R2 unit here. Oh, I didn't mean to go that far. You got an R2 unit here. It looks like a red R2 unit. But all of this reminds me of like Top Gun. You know what I mean? Like that scene in Top Gun where they're on the aircraft carrier and the ships are coming and landing. You've got the guitar playing stuff, and you got the heat rising off the deck of the aircraft carrier. Yep. I mean, it feels like this was done to stoke those types of feelings of Top Gun, which I am not going to argue with because I think that's another great movie. But
and to top that, where you were explaining that you heard the Top Gun theme, at the corresponding scene from Top Gun, the movie itself. Well, here they were playing a very, very melodic version of the Force theme. So and that's
with brass,
exactly, yeah. And so that pulled on your strings as well.
Yeah. So loved every bit of this, and I hope we get more of this. Like I love when Star Wars takes its time. I mean, George Lucas did this, and I think some of the other directors certainly have. I mean, Rian Johnson went all out on this type of stuff. But when they give us that high quality, I'm going to call it cinematic experience, these types of artistic shots, I love when that happens, especially when they can mix it in with, a lot of the action and all the member berries for my childhood. I mean, I'll take it all, right? It just seems like a great combination and mixture there. So, but yeah, going back to the trailer here, we get to see him pushing all kinds of buttons and flipping switches, getting ready to fire up a Razor Crest. We'll talk more about that here in a second. And then we get, our first comedic gag or bit of it not starting up the way it's supposed to. And then, of course, it's Grogu pushing buttons. I mean, look how cute he is, smashing buttons there.
Just let him press the buttons. Come on. Let him press the buttons.
Right,
Who cares if the ship? Yeah. Who cares if the ship doesn't move?
Yeah. He says never touch the buttons, which is the same bit that we got from the teaser trailer, right? And he kind of puts him back in his baby seat, buckles him in, as Dad would do.
Exactly. And so
Right.
a lot of the talk around this is like, how does he come across this new Razor's Crest? You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
and so yeah, and when we did go all the way back to the D23, which was the very first trailer anything we
Mhm.
got, right? D23, this is 2024, almost 2 years ago now. When we got that trailer, that was our first shot of the new Razor Crest.
Mhm.
And in that shot, for anybody that didn't see it or didn't remember, there was a moment in there where Zeb is flying the thing. You've got Mando behind him, you got Grogu behind him, and he says, "Good luck, you're going to need it." At that time, we said, or at least I speculated, we both speculated that that was probably not his ship, simply because I mean, unless they're going to go through the process of trying to explain how we got the ship, I don't think it makes a lot of sense. I think it makes more sense that it's Zeb's ship and that he has been hired to bring him in or to kind of shuffle them around and drop them off and do that sort of thing, right? That to me makes more sense, narratively. But I also tease at the very end that wouldn't be cool if at the very end of the movie they kind of do an exchange. Hey, I'll trade you the Razor Crest for this N1 Naboo starfighter that I've decked out and is all metal, right? I can see Zeb really enjoying flying that thing more than maybe this thing. So I don't know where the origin story is here. They're going to have to explain it because I think people are going to be like, "Hey, what happened to the fact that it was blown up in season 2?" But in my mind, this isn't the same Razor Crest. It's
No.
another model. It's a what is it? S970 or ST70, whatever transport ship that these are. From a practical standpoint, it makes sense that he would use one of these in this episode or had borrowed one, if you will, because he's now, if you remember at the very end of season 3 of The Mandalorian, that ends with him saying, hey, he goes up to Carson Teva on Adelphi Station, tells him that, he wants to do bounties and work for the Republic. And Carson's like surprised. They kind of mentioned that, they're going to keep this on the down low, but he's going to be doing bounty work for the New Republic, right? So you can't really bring in bounties on an N1 starfighter. You've got to have something like this where you can store all the bodies like in carbonite or dead. I don't, warm or dead or cold or hot or cold or whatever, how he says, bring him in.
I can bring you in warm or I can bring you in cold.
There you go. Thank you for the line. But yeah, I mean, he's got to have more room. So I think practically it makes more sense for him to use this for this bounty stuff rather than just the little single two pilot N1 Naboo starfighter.
Yeah.
But what do you think? I mean, do you think they're going to get into a long, lengthy explanation as to why the Razor Crest is back? Do you think this is his? Do you think it's Zeb's? What do you think?
So what I think is there's going to be some type of exchange, whether it's the N1 starfighter for the Razor Crest, or if it's, hey, you can use this ship better than I can, let me take yours, something like that. It has to be explained, but I don't think it needs to take like a fourth of the movie. Just get it over with so that we can get on to the good stuff. But yeah, this is just another Razor Crest. I don't know if you remember in season 3 when he was looking for a new starship out in Tatooine, and I forget the lady's character's name on Tatooine, the mechanic.
Peli Motto.
Peli Motto. She's like, I have something for you. And it's like, well, I hope it's a Razor Crest. I want a Razor Crest. So we know that there's more than one, that it's a class of, or a make of starship. So we know there's more than one. So this could just be another one. What a question that I might have, and probably won't get answered in the movie, but maybe with like in a novel or a comic book is, we see here the yellow markings and stuff, and it is Zeb. It could be his ship. Is that like a Sabine touch there, because you know how she liked to mark up stuff. So that it'd be cool to try to get that explanation. Like I said, probably not in the movie, but in some other form of media that ties into this.
Yeah, and you're hitting on something we talked about too when we did the D23. The markings were on there when we saw it, and we thought, oh, that's probably Sabine's, little custom art favor that she did for him to kind of deck it out. But yeah, we'll see. I don't know. They might explain some of that stuff. I mean, that's really deep, and it's really just going to be servicing the hardcore fans of Star Wars Rebels. But I'm down for that. Okay, well, we'll continue to move on here through the trailer. So they lift off in that you get the quick flyby. You can see the markings there, but it doesn't look like it says anything. It's just a cool paint job. We get the Lucasfilm logo. And then we have what I think is, I can't tell. That looks like a Mandalorian. And I was like, oh, that looks like a ship coming in. But the more I looked at this, it looks more like somebody on a jetpack. So it may not be Mando, but it could be another character flying in on this city. This city is prominently displayed. We saw it in the teaser that came out back in September.
Right.
Yeah. We got to see some bits and pieces of that here. This looks to be the same city. I know there's been a lot of speculation and talk today about what city this is. In my mind, it is Nar Shaddaa, and only because they teased us with Nar Shaddaa during the Acolyte. And while that may not carry a lot of weight, the fact that they're willing to bring that up and make it kind of canon, I think is pretty important. But what now that we're here with all these huts and all these other, the scenery looks a lot like Nal Hutta, then to me, it feels like Nar Shaddaa, this has to be Nar Shaddaa, which is the moon of Nal Hutta, which is, kind of like a kind of like Coruscant. It's got, all kinds of street lights, and it looks like a really shady place, if you will. So in my mind, I think this is what we're talking about here. And I'm just going to keep calling it Nar Shaddaa until somebody tells me otherwise or I'm proven wrong. But just want to throw that out there. Hey, quickly, sorry, I went to go to the chat here. One Up versus CPU asked, is that R2A3 talking about the red R2 unit? Possibly. That would be another deep cut. Like, I don't know if they would actually say it. Maybe they just say the name, similar with what they did with R2D5. He was in there. He was prominently in season 3 of
R5D4.
R5D4. I don't know why I said R5D4 in Mando season 3.
Bad motivator.
So, yep. So maybe they did bring him in here. Beskar Crest. Not sure what that is. Reader Reborn. And then Rob says, I'm not sure Zeb would fit in the N1.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
I was thinking too.
He's a big. I mean, he's like Wookiee size. I couldn't see him fitting into the N1. But again, we'll see. I think, like I mentioned previously, something has to happen where he gives up his N1 so that he could utilize the Razor Crest that he has available. So we'll see. But let's not make it half the movie.
Yep. Dale comes in very confidently, says it's Nar Shaddaa. So maybe they've confirmed that now somewhere else. But it was always Nar Shaddaa to me, even back when we got the trailer. All right, so back to the trailer here. I believe, again, that is the Mandalorian flying in here. And we get him, I guess maybe this is a continuation scene. This is where he pulls up to this little Hugo's. And I could not make out the bottom part of that this morning when I was trying to translate all this stuff. Over there, I think on the right-hand side, it says like bestseller. And I think there's some other things in there talking about the different kinds of plates with meat. So it's just the menu. I know we're getting into the weeds on this stuff, but I thought it was fun. When I saw this, by the way, if you look over here to the far left, and you're not going to be able to see it on the screen, but over here on the far left-hand side, you can see one line of Aurebesh that's going up and down. And as it finally comes into focus and there's light on this, it disappears. But that actually says Rhoda. So like Rhoda the Hutt. So it looks like there's these posters off on the left-hand side that are advertising these gladiators that are in this arena that we'll see a little bit later. But I thought it was interesting to see that we've got a Rhoda spelling or sighting, if you will. So, but he walks up to what I'm assuming again is Hugo. He drops his New Republic credit, which seems to be a big deal for him because he's like, for that price, I'll tell you anything you want, right? Or I'll tell you, for that price, I'll tell you whatever you want. This is the character that is being voiced by Martin Scorsese. That was confirmed officially on Star Wars' website today, or at least on the Twitter accounts and the social media accounts. And it's interesting that we get another one of these characters back from Solo. As soon as Mando mentions that he's looking for a hut, he then says, close to the night, thank you, and then disappears. I mean, the obvious question would be, why is he so scared? But I would imagine if this is Nar Shaddaa, the huts run everything, and you don't really want to make your presence known. You don't want to get involved with them because no good's going to come out of it, right? He's probably just a business person, wants to keep his head low, stay out of all the trouble that's going around there, and make money in profit from all of these people that are, I don't know, intoxicated or having fun in the nightlife and all that stuff. So I get why he says that, but it's funny. I wonder if he's actually going to play a larger part in the story, or if this is really kind of a one and done type thing.
Yeah, I'm curious to see that too. I mean, I'm thinking, it is Martin Scorsese, and would he commit to a bigger part than just a cameo? But I guess we'll find out. I mean, there'll be opportunities for that character to show up in later on in the movie after the scene. But I don't know. My gut says that we're just going to get this quick cameo so Martin Scorsese can say, I've been in a Star Wars movie, and then on from that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, he could be somebody that pops up, not necessarily like a one and done cameo like this scene only. He could say, hey, maybe he worked something out with him, and every once in a while, Mando comes back and checks in, and he's got more information. He's kind of feeding him information. I can see that where it's very limited and it only would require Scorsese to go in and record like, a page of dialogue. And even though it equates to 2 or 3 scenes in the movie, that's probably not a heavy lift for him. So I can see something like that. But you're right. I don't know that he would just kind of come on, do these couple of lines here, leave and just, call it quits and say, hey, I was in a Star Wars movie. But who knows? Yeah. Nonetheless, it's a great character. Love the fact that we get an Ardenian again back. This scene here, we can pair this up with the scene from the teaser from September. So this now that it opens up these doors, we weren't really sure. I mean, I think back when we did the breakdown on that, we said it was likely a hut kind of place because we could see the symbols on the wall there. But it opens up and we can see the twins. But I do want to go back because if you remember from the teaser, these 2 big Sentinel droids on the left and right hand side, I can't tell. He does fight them at some point, and they're either out of commission. I didn't go back to look at that trailer. I can't remember if these were the positions they were in after he fought them, or if that fight is going to happen maybe after he comes out of here. But he does fight both of these in the teaser trailer, so we know that's going to happen. Do you recall if this was how that ended?
So no, this looks different than that. What I'm thinking is happened is he's gone in to talk to the twins, and maybe something went bad. So they bring in those Sentinels to come in and kind of try to clean things up, and that's when Mando kind of takes him out. That's how I think the sequence is, but I'm not sure because they play editing tricks all the time. So, but just by seeing what we saw previously, then seeing here again, it looks like he goes in, he tries to converse with the twins. It goes south. They end up calling the Sentinels in, and Mando has to take him out.
Yep. I think that's probably the better sequence because they do look to be in kind of a, sentinel position here. They're not moving like they were when he fights them. So begs to argue that does happen afterwards. That does look like a super battle droid back there, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Right over her shoulder. Mm-hmm. These are the twins. So if anybody doesn't remember, the twins appeared in the Book of Boba Fett. Mm-hmm. They were cousins of Jabba the Hutt. And after Jabba, was killed and power was lost, they kind of came in. They argued. They had Black Chrysanthemum, or Chrysanthemum now as he's named. And they tried to fight Boba for that. And then eventually they just kind of gave up because they felt like, hey, it's just a piece of rock. And really what it was is they were scared, I guess, by the Imperials, if I'm not mistaken, at that point. So they ended up leaving shop. So it's cool that we got to see them back here in the Book of Boba Fett. That's kind of that world building stuff that Filoni's been talking about doing for the past, 5-6 years, ever since D23 in 2020 or 21. Mm-hmm. So it's good that we're seeing some of this stuff come back.
Yeah, I think from the Book of Boba Fett's perspective, I think you remember Bib Fortuna was the daimyo of Tatooine, and I think he was essentially a puppet for the twins. And then they take him out, and that's what lures the twins out. And then I believe, the twins wanted to, avoid the Imperial entanglements, but they also didn't want to get into conflicts with the Pikes. And remember, that was a whole conflict on the Book of Boba Fett. And they were trying to avoid conflict with the Pikes. So that's why they kind of took a step back and like, okay, you can have this rock and we're done.
Yeah. I mean, and it's a sound argument because if they do come back to Nar Shaddaa or now Hutta, there's a lot more there for them, especially in Nar Shaddaa. I mean, there's a ton of money to be made rather than sitting on this desert rock of Tatooine. Like, who cares? Why Jabba decided to pick that place up? I don't know. Okay. Let's go into the next scene here. And this is a scene from, I'm going to call back to the D23. In fact, I'll pull it up here in just a second. But back in D23 in 2024, we were introduced to the first part of this scene. Or the second part of the scene. Now we're getting the first part of the scene. Mm-hmm. And so what we've got is Mando coming in. We've got a bunch of Imperials here. Well, I'm going to assume they're Imperials. The guy in the main seat here, that's the gentleman right here. He actually appears in episode 5, I think. I went back and looked. He's in episode 5 of Mando season 3, mm-hmm. when Moff Gideon goes in and walks in, and they're kind of having that big conference, kind of conferencing, and they're talking to all the different remnants of the Empire, their leaders that are kind of on hollow, and they're going back and forth about, Mando and all that stuff or whatever. Anyways, he's from season 3. And in that scene, he says, if we give them a show of strength, they will rally behind us. And what he's referring to, the same guy right here, what he's referring to is they were acknowledging that, look, we still have a number of people that are very loyal, faithfully loyal to the Empire. And all we need to do is kind of rally them, give them something to fight for, and they'll stand up against the New Republic. And so I say that only just to kind of contextualize the scene here. Unfortunately, this poor sap is probably going to die because of what I'll show you here in the D23 trailer. But here he says, "Long live the Empire." It's definitely one of the main characters that you can see in the holo scene. So it's good that they brought him back. And I'll come back to him in a second once we get to the next scene. Here's where it got really interesting. And I pinged you immediately when I saw this, but she hands him, this is a Colonel Ward, played by Sigourney Weaver. We'll get her in just a second here. But she is handing Mando these kind of playing cards here. For anybody that doesn't know, this is a playing card that came up in The Rise and Fall of the Galactic Empire, a book that came out last year. Really good book. Lots of great stuff from that. But one of the things that came out of that was there were these things called Imperial Fugitive Trade Cards. And it echoes what in our real life during World War II, after World War II, they had kind of made these playing cards with some of the most wanted from, the Axis powers. In 2000, it wasn't 2019. Maybe like late 1990s, I think they created some cards for like some of the people that in Iraq that they needed. And I've seen them as cold case cards. They've done cards for like prisoners and they hand them out, and it's got pictures on there of people that they're looking for, and they can get amnesty by providing details. So anyways, I know that's a lot of like trivia stuff, but it is really cool that they're kind of mimicking that here. Or at least they mimicked it in the book, and then they've pulled that out and put it into the trailer. And what we've got here is a deck of 76 Sabbath cards that have people that are wanted by the New Republic, that served under the Galactic Empire, that are still on the loose and still wanted. And that's why we get the line from Mando who says, "We'll take out every bad guy in your deck of cards." Interesting that this character doesn't have a face. That's actually similar to some of the real life cards. They didn't have faces for these. They knew these people existed, but they were so much hidden and elusive that they never were able to get a photo of them. And so they're just kind of, again, mirroring, life mirroring art, mirroring life, and life mirroring art kind of thing.
Yeah, I thought that's a nice touch. Using Sabacc playing cards as ways to identify, the wanted fugitives. And I thought that was a real slick line, saying, when he said, I'll capture everyone on your deck. I think that was a pretty slick line. It kind of harkens me back to, days where I were at Vegas and just messing with cards all night.
Yeah, right. And this goes back again. It ties back to season 3, that final episode when he goes in, that I mentioned earlier, where he's talking to Carson Teva, and Teva says that he's never going to get it approved. He's never going to get the job approved for Mando to go out and find these people for as bounties. So it looks like, I don't know if this is on the up and up. Maybe he did get it approved, or maybe Colonel Ward is doing this on the down low in cahoots with Carson Teva. We'll see. I don't know if that really even matters, but it is interesting to think about. And then we got like another cute moment where he's saluting. I mean, how cute is that? Look at that. And he's got his sigil on there too. Yeah.
This was, later on we'll hear Mando talk about it a little bit, but essentially that's his armor, and that's his Mandalorian armor for now. And that's pretty, I thought that was pretty cool and pretty sweet at the same time. Yeah.
He's got the Beskar stuff underneath too. Remember the chain stuff that he has? He's got that as well. But yeah. And this is of course on a Delphi base, which is kind of like that tropical base that we saw in season 5. Okay, so this goes back to that scene now. So here's the first part of that scene. You've got Mando coming in. He's spraying this the flames down with his flamethrower, really as a cover, right, to kind of shield him from as he's coming in. These guys can't see. They take cover, as you can see here. That allows him to go in, grab the blaster rifle of this stormtrooper on the right, and point it at the stormtrooper on the left to take him out. So he gets shot in the face. And then he shoots him in the knee to take him down right there. As he falls down, he turns around and gives him one quick shot in the head, I believe, or it's in the chest right there. So to take him out. So this is the first part of that scene. Then we cut over to the scene from the D23 stuff. And in the D23 stuff, we get to see what happens next. So I'm going to try to pull this up very deftly. I don't know if it's going to work. There we go. So as you can see here, this is the next part of that scene. So again, this was D23, wasn't shown. So I'm not going to show the video. We have the video. I'm not going to show it. But you can see here that chair is where that Imperial officer was sitting. And if you look closely at that chair, there is a smoldering bullet or blaster hole in that chair. So likely Mando comes in, kills that person. Maybe there's some dialogue that happens. I can't see him just coming in and killing him in cold blood. Maybe that guy tries to pull a blaster on him or something. But either way, that guy dies. And then you got everybody else freaking out here. When we broke down this trailer, it's a Patreon exclusive. So I'll plug Patreon. If you're a Patreon member, you can go out and listen to it or watch the video of it. But when we broke down this trailer, one of the things that we were questioning was whether or not these guys had their arms, like hands bound. Like you can see him with his hands together. Maybe not. He could just be pleading to, hey, don't kill us too. But I think that the interesting thing here is that these do look like Imperial folk. Like they look like they're wearing Imperial outfits. Some of them do. And some look like they're wearing just kind of traditional, I don't know, high officer or important people in the galaxy or that region garb of some type. I don't know. Any thoughts on I guess what we're seeing here? And I'll go back to the trailer because that was really the only thing I want to show you is the kind of the aftermath.
Yeah, I think what we're seeing here is we're seeing these high-ranking Imperial officers. They're kind of dressed in a mixture of what their official uniform is and then in plain clothes because they're trying to hide out. I think at this point, this group of people, they know that they're being hunted. So they're trying to blend in where they can. It's like, we saw that one officer that ends up getting shot on the chair. He had his Imperial uniform, but there was he had a big old jacket over it, where you can see his rank badge and everything. But he had a big jacket over it. So I think what they're doing here is, they're trying to hide in plain sight because they know they're being hunted.
Yeah, that's fair too. That's another dead giveaway. And I forgot to mention the right hand side, that stack of pylons, metal pylons or decorative furniture, whatever it is. You saw that in the other scene as well. So it's definitely a continuation of it. But it's Mando doing Mando stuff and being cool as he kills stormtroopers, which we all love. The next shot looks to be a Delphi base. You've got the U-Wing. So this was shown in the teaser, I think. Mm-hmm. I'm getting them all mixed up now. That was our first scene, a shot of it. So at some point, it looks like they are using a U-Wing and this was one of the ships from Rogue One, of course. But yeah, it's really nice, really neat. They've got a bunch of X-Wings that was really cool to see. You've got a couple Y-Wings in here as well. You got one up at the top. You got one on the side that's parked down here. And that was really it. I didn't really see any other ships that stood out to me, but I didn't really look that closely either. But either way, it's a cool shot of seeing them land on a Delphi base. And then you get Sigourney Weaver's character, Colonel Ward, talking about this isn't revenge. She continues that line by saying it's about preventing another war. Mm-hmm. So I have a question about this. She's saying it's not about revenge. I didn't know how to take this as in, is she telling him it's not about revenge, like, hey, you need to calm down kind of thing? Or is he arguing that, hey, I need to be going after bounty hunters and not, Road of the Hutt? Because Road of the Hutt is really, he's a gladiator or whatever. Maybe it's the twins. I don't know. But it feels like there's a conflict here. Or maybe it sounds like she's trying to resolve the conflict that exists between them and what his clear mission is here, whether it's going after bounty people for revenge versus doing it for, actually preventing a new war. Yeah,
I think what it sounds like they have a different opinion on the ways to the end or the ends to the means.
Motive?
The motive, exactly. It sounds like they both want the end game for what they want to accomplish is the same, but the method to how they get there is that I think that's where they have the difference of opinion. But again, that's something that, we're going to probably tackle with until we actually see the movie.
We get so before she finishes that line, we get this shot here, which is kind of a neat shot. It's a first-person perspective shot of the mouse droid. This comes from the D23 trailer as well. We got the first most of that D23 trailer was the mouse droid kind of going through the Imperial. I think it was an AT-AT or maybe it's a base. I'm not even sure at this point, but nonetheless, it was through the first-person perspective of that mouse droid. That's why it looks kind of, you got this kind of weird filter. And then it cuts away from that when we see Grogu kind of jump out in front of it. This scene's a lot longer in the D23 trailer, mm-hmm. but he lifts it up and then drops it and it kind of explodes. And so we get to, everybody was oohing and ahhing because it was the first time we had seen the baby use the Force mm-hmm. like this in a while. Another little comedic bit with the wheel rolling by. He just kind of turns and watches it go. That scene actually is longer. They just didn't play the whole thing.
Yeah, I think when I did my reaction, I was like, oh, that's just like what Luke did to the Death Trooper. He kind of, instead of breaking it apart, he kind of crushed it together. Well, he actually used the Force to break apart that mouse droid when it hit the ground. So
Yeah,
that's what I said in audibly. I said, oh, like Luke.
yeah, right. Yeah, that was a really epic moment too when he crushed it like that.
Oh yeah, we could probably talk for hours on that episode of The Mandalorian.
So this is interesting. Like the architecture is, well, this is the part where I'm confused. Like I'm conflicted. If you remember, Jabba took the palace on Tatooine because it belonged to the Bomar monks,
Mm-hmm.
and that architecture, if I remember correctly, and I could be wrong, but the architecture, if I remember correctly, was of Tatooine or of the Bomar monks. I forget. Maybe it was one and the same. But then when we see the architecture here and what we've seen subsequently from other, I don't know, Huttese type structures, it looks similar to this. So I'm not really sure where that matters. Again, I told you we'd get in the weeds, and this is where the weeds are because no one's thinking about this stuff. But it is, I'm thinking about it because when I see this gate coming down, it's very much, it seems like it was inspired by the same gates that we saw in Jabba's palace. But to me, this feels like this is not now Hutta, right? Because you've got the lush greenery here. You've got this definitely is kind of a Hutt kind of fortress. You've got these droids with capes. I don't know. Droids and capes is like the coolest thing. It's very in right now in Star Wars, but you got a whole bunch of them in this trailer. You can kind of see them running here. There was a leak of one of the toys, if I'm not mistaken, of one of these droids with the cape, and it was right in an STHP, the STAP hover thing from episode 1, oddly enough. So I don't know where that came from. It could just be them, feeling like they're playing with toys again. But nonetheless, this is what I'm assuming is now Hutta, and this seems to be kind of where I guess the twins are maybe here.
So I've been privy to some theories here, and I'm not saying I buy into them, but it's something worth talking about. It. There's value in discussing it. Where a lot of you talk about the architecture here. Now, obviously, we don't see this in what I'm about to explain, but the architecture is similar to Black Spire Outpost. Could this be Batuu?
Oh, I guess it's possible. I hadn't considered Batuu.
Considering that they're changing the ride of Smuggler's Run to fit into the timeline of the Mandalorian and Grogu. Now, again, obviously, when you go to Galaxy's Edge, you don't see the vegetation, right? Because it's not there. But people are saying the way that the architecture is here in this part of the trailer, it's very similar to Black Spire Outpost.
I can see that.
So is it?
I don't think it's a bad theory. Yeah. I mean,
is it Batuu? Yeah.
Is it Batuu? I mean, if they're doing it, then yeah, it feels like they're doing it for purely marketing reasons because of the ride, which I don't hate. What does it really matter at the end of the day? As long as the narrative is strong. But yeah, I like that theory. It certainly would explain where I'm kind of hung up on, which, I'll probably lose sleep over tonight. But these are, I believe these are also Hutt transport ships, if I'm not mistaken, or Hutt fighter ships. That's why they're really big and bulky like that. So all of that just screams that it's the twins, or at least now Hutta and more Hutts. I wonder too, like this is just a quick aside. There was that Jabba movie that was in like pre-production for a while there. I wonder how much of anything they repurposed, and kind of wove into this storytelling. I mean, maybe nothing, but they had spent a lot of time. I think they actually had a script written for that movie for Jabba.
Well, the one thing about Star Wars projects is, if an idea is created and if it gets as far as getting put on paper, there's always a chance that even if that particular project doesn't see the light of day, certain aspects of that project could show up in other projects. That happens all the time. So maybe we will see something from that abandoned Hutt project that really never got off the ground.
Yeah, I think a lot of what we got from like 1313 has now made its way into Mando, Boba, and Andor, if I'm not mistaken. So they've repurposed a lot of that story. The next shot here is very quickly. It's just Mando saying, strap in. They're about to jump into hyperspace. They do so. We get to see the Razor Crest flying through hyperspace. All right. And this is where it gets really interesting.
Yes.
Now this is the first shot, the first official shot of Embo. He was rumored to be in this movie back like a year ago, if I'm not mistaken. I think Bespin Bulletin was the first one to break that one. Again, it was a leak back then. It's now been confirmed that this is, although I will say this, in the official Star Wars, like if you go to starwars.com, they have kind of a blurb about this trailer. They don't actually call Embo. They just say that he's a Kuzu bounty hunter, which, I mean, come on, it's a Kuzu bounty hunter, and he's got a dog next to him. So I don't know who else it could be, but this is clearly, in my mind, this is clearly Embo. That is very likely his dog, which there's some discussions about him because that is Marok is the dog's name.
Mm-hmm.
Marok in Empire's End, I believe, was already dead. And this takes place right after Empire's End. So they may just say, screw it, we're not going to even reference that, or that doesn't exist anymore. And this is Embo and that's Marok, or this is a new dog. I don't know. One way or the other. It's probably not that important, but just kind of throwing that out there that this was a story that was picked up in Empire's End by Chuck Wendig. The thing that was scary to me, though, is when you look at this hut here, and this is another one of those things I posted on social media, that looks like the Mando little hut that they got at the very end of season 3.
Right, on Navarro, yep.
On Navarro, when they roll credits, they were sitting like over there in the front on this patio. And this leads me to believe that maybe Embo is the one that's coming in here looking like on a bounty for Mando and gets his bounty. Like, I don't know how he subdues him. Maybe the fact that Mando's sleeping and maybe he doesn't have access to his armor or whatever. But I assume that Marok, Embo come in, they capture Din Djarin, and that's what leads. I'm going to fast forward here just to this part right here, because now this is really a good shot here of Embo. We can kind of see him standing there. He looks great. Like, he looks like he was lifted right out of the Clone Wars and some of the comic books that he's been in. But you can see him here, and he turns, and you can see Grogu, who seems very like shocked, right? And so he's not putting up a fight. So maybe in the process of Mando fighting Embo in the hut, maybe Mando tells him to go get away or whatever, and Embo decides to use the fact that he's got Din or Djarin now, got him locked up or held prisoner, and uses that as leverage to also bring in the baby. But I don't know. Again, reckless speculation on my part, but I do think this could be their hut, and Embo is the one that was sent in to pull him in.
And, I know you said that they just called him essentially a generic bounty hunter. If that's what they were referring to him now, if Disney and Lucasfilm knew what was good for him, they should just go ahead and call him Embo. Just do it. Don't play with that, because if he's some generic bounty hunter, then you're going to upset a lot of people.
And we get to this part here. That's not Embo there. That is definitely one of the droids with capes. And it looks to be like they're presenting him in front of the twins, and they pull off his helmet. And this kind of brings up another topic that I know a lot of people have been talking about is, yeah, it's cool, we got Pedro Pascal. But I guess the ramifications from a purely lore perspective is, what does this mean now for the character? When we look at the 3 seasons of Mando, he was on this journey of purity, right? Wanted to abide by he was like the purist. He was like a pilgrim of sorts, wanted to make sure that he followed all the rules. And then when he meets Bo-Katan, she kind of like really screws with his mind and really challenges him and makes him rethink about, like, what am I really doing here? Who am I? Am I really one of these guys, or am I one of these guys? And in the end, he decides that, he stays true to himself. He goes back to the mines of Mandalore, goes into the living waters to go be, what was the word? It wasn't exonerated, but like purified, right?
Yep.
Because he had done something wrong. He had sinned, essentially, because he purposely took his mask off. Now, that's, I think, where maybe things are a little bit different here. He is exposed, but it wasn't by his choice. Someone else did it for him. So maybe that's an out. Maybe that's a reason why he doesn't have to go through penance again and go back to the living waters. On the other hand, as I posted today, I was like, well, this would be cool, because now he's got to go back to the living waters. And if he goes back to the living waters, that gives him the perfect reason to go back into the water and find the mythosaur, right? And tame that thing and have a scene that I wanted from Mando season 1, 2, or 3. I had predicted that we would see him ride a mythosaur before that series was over. This would be my retribution, or I don't know. It would be really cool to actually see him actually do that. I don't, again, that may be too much. Maybe that's like a after credit scene or something that happens at the very end. But I guess where do you land on this? Is it a bad thing that he's taken his helmet off? Pedro Pascal's face notwithstanding, or do you think this is something that they'll be able to scoot by and say, well, he didn't take it off himself; it was somebody else doing it, and so no harm here done.
So for me, it's like a two-pronged thing. So we know at the end of Mandalorian season 3, essentially the factions of Mandalorians have reunited to take back Mandalore, right? Mm-hmm. And even the armorer, in talking to Bo-Katan, was like, "Hey, take your helmet off. Take your helmet off." So does that mean the armorer sect is now more lax on the helmet rules or not? Because again, they're unified. And then I go back to even further in season 1 or 2, where the armorer asks Din Djarin, did you remove your helmet? No. Was it removed forcefully?
True.
No. And
yeah.
so is there a different answer? Is there a different penance if it's removed forcefully? Like if you didn't do it on your own, we don't know the answer to that. So again, I don't know where we go from here, but we do see him without his helmet a lot in this trailer. A lot of the chatter is that he's going to be spending a lot of time in this movie without it. So where does that land as far as the creed? Where does it land on if it was removed forcefully? Is it a different, I guess, I don't want to say punishment, but do you have to do something different, or are you forgiven if it's taken, forcefully? So those are questions that I think we're going to, if not have an answer, we're going to have to kind of try to assume what the answer is, because then that just leaves a whole question. Okay, so where does he stand with his particular sect of Mandalorians, and what's the difference of penance if you remove your helmet or someone takes it off forcefully?
Yep. Yeah, and I think it's probably less, right, mm-hmm. if it's been removed forcefully. I mean, it's probably still not a good thing, because maybe you argue that they should go down, die fighting to mm-hmm. ensure that their faces are never seen, but I don't know exactly the fine details there. I think the other thing that's being said here is you've got the brother of the twins saying you will suffer, and then it will be his turn, and that's when we get that shot of Grogu with Embo, who we assume is Embo, looking down at him. So they're definitely threatening both of their lives, and I think that's going to be a big game changer for Mando, right? Mm-hmm. Fine if you want to threaten him, fine if he's hurt, but get your hands off my child, kind of thing. Right. Give me back my son, as Mel Gibson would say.
Exactly. And then, we see, after we hear that, we hear one of the twins speaking those lines, we see a really pissed off Pedro Pascal. And so, you don't, that's the one, again, going back to, they see right there, he's not happy. And again, touching on the fact, you're a dad, I'm a dad, you don't mess with our kid. And you want to bring out the worst of a dad, you mess with his kid. And so I think we get that. That's the vibe that I got. Look, I didn't even notice this. He's holding his helmet.
Yeah, he's holding his helmet.
I just noticed it for the first time. So yeah, he's essentially saying, if you don't come through for me, or if you don't do what I ask, not only are you going to suffer, but your child is going to suffer. And we see him, and does not look happy at all.
Mm-hmm. Yep. He's going to kill this guy. He's going to kill them both. I'm going to put money down right now. By the way, I saw some other nerd fight going on about whether or not Embo would actually be able to subdue somebody like Din Djarin. The answer is yes. Like they've done enough with Embo's character, both in the Clone Wars and in the comics, to really make the argument that this is not like, your mid-tier bounty hunter. This is somebody who is like top of their game, always brings in their guy, similar to almost like a Cad Bane.
Cad Bane, exactly.
Right. So yes, the short answer is yes. And especially if he catches Mando off guard, which I would assume happens since it's raining and, maybe there's loud, noise. It stopped him from being detected or whatever. It's definitely worth mentioning that Embo can hold his own. So, and he's cool, man. He's got all kinds of cool powers, and his hat he can throw, and the dog Marok goes and picks it up and brings it back to him. It's a really neat character. And he was supposed to be killed off, if I remember correctly, in the Clone Wars in that one episode. And they loved him so much they kept him around, but that's neither here nor there. Okay, we get on May 22nd. This is where we got the gear up now, and so we get to see what I call if you've ever seen the movie Commando, where Arnold Schwarzenegger starts putting on all his gear, and they keep showing you that, and there's 80s cheesy music popping in. I hope Jon Favreau does this. Like, this is so like right up his alley that he would do something like this, or maybe like a Taika Waititi would do it. But you get to see him putting on his little shooter, wrist shooter there. He's got his sigil, which is his armor. He gets to put that on, and that's the best part right there.
Yeah,
just tightening that
reminds me of when Captain America tightens his shield strap. Just like,
yeah, that's
that
right
little
too.
quick tight. Yeah, he pulls it real tight. Yeah, that's what it reminded me of.
Yeah, I mean, it's a trope that's been played out for a pretty long time, but it's really cute that you've got Grogu. I mean, and just the puppet, man. I'm so glad they used the puppet again for all of these shots. This shot's interesting because you've got the Razor Crest, and I cannot tell what kind of ships those are, but there's two. Looks like there was three. You can see one on the right-hand side, just in front of, I don't know if you can see my mouse here on the screen, if that's going to actually carry over, but you can see one ship right here. You can see another one. You can see the vapor trails of that ship on the left-hand side, and something's been blown up in the middle. So either it was another one of these ships or there was another ship that they were flanking. So I don't know where this is at, but we get to see we're going to see the Razor Crest in action flying around.
So what I've heard is those are those, you call them the Hutt transport ships. Those are just like another angle of the Hutt transport ships. But I don't know if I buy that because they just don't look the same. But again,
no, the other ones are, they're kind of bulky and they got a flat bottom. And that was to accommodate the Hutts because, they're big, small.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So yeah, I don't know that's the case. Let's see. Sorry, there's a couple of different questions in here that I haven't been paying attention to. Let me see where I could go to. Dale's confirmed he's definitely Embo. The question was whether or not it was removed by somebody else. Yeah, exactly. We kind of covered that about whether, what is that? What are the ramifications for that? Do you think Keanu Reeves will play the great Darth Revan? No, not anymore. Maybe 15 years ago. And then One Up versus CPU says, I'm thinking it's more of an enemy took it off. You got to fight, then put it back on to prove your toughness. And then he also says there was a High Republic character with a hat like that. Yes, that was Maz Kanata's friend that lived on Takodana. Keep me honest, One Up, if I've got that wrong. But that was another cool character. She was really cool. I can't remember her name now, but she was in the comics as well. So, okay, back to the trailer. We get to see that quickly, that battle there, air battle. I was trying to look at some of the parts. I could have sworn there's a person right here on the left-hand side, but it's too blurry to make out.
Yeah, it's tough to see.
Similar to like the opening to episode 3.
Yeah.
You got to see that clone trooper.
Yeah, when the ARC fighter gets blown up and you see the clone trooper being sucked up into space. Yep.
Yeah. So probably not that. But here's the Anzellans. We don't get a lot of them in this trailer. We've gotten a lot of them in the other trailers already. So we know they play a big part. In this, I know there was a leak of one of the toys that they've got like an Anzellan starship, which is not a huge spoiler. I mean, they've got their own ships as well, but they do seem to play a bigger role. Like in the D20, no, it was in the Star Wars. It was either maybe it was in the teaser trailer. Yeah, the teaser trailer that came out last year. They showed them running around in the sewers with Grogu. So it does look like they are going to get separated at some point. We're going to have kind of these two parallel stories, and maybe this is the part. Maybe Grogu gets away and he's on a mission to free Din Djarin again, because I think that's what happened in season 3 as well, right?
Right.
But so maybe they're doing something similar, and so he enlists the help of the Anzellans to find whatever they need to get Grogu or to get Mando freed from the Hutts. I don't know. And
that's a big topic that has come out of this trailer, is that are we going to see a more independent Grogu? Because a lot of people are saying that if we do see that, we see him more independent, that it's going to be, technically they're father and son. Technically, he's been taking care of him for the most part for, the last, the 3 seasons of Mandalorian, and then most of the footage that we've seen so far in this movie. But now, can Grogu be a true partner in the adventures, and that's where a lot of people are like hoping that that's kind of how the storyline goes, is there's going to be a time where they're separated. Mando's doing his own thing. Grogu's doing his own thing to get to the end game of where they both need to be successful in whatever they need to do. So, I think I personally would like to see that. I'd like to see Grogu be a little bit more independent, be a little bit more in an element that he'll be, he'll succeed in. And then become not just, essentially someone that Din Djarin needs to take care of, but essentially a partner in their adventures.
Yeah, and I think that it's been a natural progression ever since season 1. He was very protective. The baby couldn't do much at all of anything. And then we saw that progression happen, especially after he came back from training with Luke.
Mhm.
He actually had, we don't know how much time had passed. I think, oh boy, I don't remember how much time we speculated had passed, but it seemed to have been a couple months, if not like 6 months. It wasn't just a couple days with Uncle Luke. He was there for a while. So, he trained in the use of the Force. Plus, he had some training there on it was Concordia, I believe. I don't think they ever officially said, or maybe they did. But one of the moons where all of the bounty or the Mandalorians were in the caves, remember? And he was going through that kind of youth training with the other youth. So he's had training here and there. My personal opinion is I don't want them to rush this, because we've got to make sure that, like, I've got questions about a whole nother show that we can do on where the heck is Grogu by the time we get to the Rise of Skywalker, right? So you got to pace yourself. You got to give Grogu time to be independent and show that he is developing as a character, both in the ways of the Jedi or the Force and in the ways of the Mandalorians. But at the same time, you don't want to rush it to where he's completely independent, because then now you've got a loose story thread here, or you've got a tragic situation where he doesn't make it out of the next 15 years before we get into the Rise of Skywalker. You get what I'm saying? Like,
no, that's a great point. That's a great point. Is you want it, you want the evolution to happen, but you want, and the maturation to happen, but you want it to happen as naturally as possible. You don't want to just have to happen overnight, because then you're exactly right. Then it tends to have him be able to do his own thing, but then it leaves that part of the story open. It's like, okay, well, what the heck happened to him after the fact? So no, that makes perfect sense.
And it makes marketing sense too. Like, you're going to milk this kid for all it's worth, right?
Definitely.
So the more he's kind of dependent and still, quote, the baby and being taken care of. I mean, that's the part that I love as a father, but it certainly sells a lot of stuff too. So you don't want him to grow up too quickly. And we got to remember, from perspective wise, I mean, Yoda lived over 800 years, right? What's her name? She was up to like Yaddle. Wasn't she like 700?
She was like right under there. Yep.
Yeah, she lived it pretty long too. So their lifespans are completely different. So even though 50 years has passed, he could just have aged, what we would consider maybe like 6 months or a year at most.
Right, exactly. So, and they addressed that, and of course, all Star Wars fans know it. But they address it in this trailer where he's Din Djarin says, he's going to outlive me by centuries. And he knows that already. So I agree with you. It's good to see him doing his own thing for a bit, but then again, have it be as natural as possible, not just try to have it overnight, because then again, it just opens up a Pandora's box of questions and essentially loose storylines that we may not potentially get any answers to. And of course, that's going to be frustrating.
Yeah. I definitely want the answers before I pitch out of here.
Exactly.
And this is the line. So this scene here is where we get the line that he will live for centuries beyond me. What was the exact line? I had it written down here somewhere. This kid will live centuries beyond me is what he says. And you've got Grogu walking with a stick, which I think is wonderful, because, Yoda had one. It seems like these Yaddle didn't necessarily ever have to have one, but it felt like this was something that's specific. Maybe they have like bad hips or whatever, but I don't know where this is at. I think this is probably now Hutta as well, just because it feels like we're going to be landlocked there for a while based on what we've seen so far. That may not be true, but based on what we've seen so far outside of the Hoth planet, most of what we've seen seems to be around this kind of greenery, lush kind of planet. And with Nar Shaddaa in scope, then it makes sense that we would be on Nal Hutta. What he's doing here, I don't know. I like this next shot here, though, where he's kind of sitting on this log. Again, maybe this is Nal Hutta, but he's in this swampy area surrounded by life. That was one of the big things about Dagobah, was that it was teeming with the Force because of all the life forms and that lived on that planet. So it makes sense that this might be a place where he goes to kind of meditate, maybe take some of the lessons that he learned from, Luke, with his time with Luke Skywalker. But I've got questions about what this scene is. Like, maybe it's just a throwaway shot where, they're setting something up where before they take off, he's doing one kind of final meditation and that's it. But it could be more, right? I'm not going to go. There was one other person today. I'm not going to name any names, but they were like, oh, we're going to get to see Luke Skywalker in this. I don't think that's going to happen. Like, that seems a huge distraction. If anything, maybe they do like a flashback to where he's thinking about some of the trainings that he did, but I don't necessarily think we're going to get an appearance from, a an AI version of Mark Hamill as Luke Skywalker. But I think it's important that they continue to play up the idea that he is half Mandalorian and half Force sensitive, aka a pupil of the light side from his training
So
with
a Padawan,
Luke Skywalker.
yeah.
Yeah, essentially a mini Padawan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this reminded me of Dagobah so much. Yoda and Dagobah. You hit the nail on the head when you said that. I when I first saw this scene, that's the first thing that came to my mind, is that it is very much like Dagobah. It is very much like Yoda on Dagobah. Even here, the stick even looks very similar to the walking stick that Yoda had. So this really was nostalgic for me when I saw these scenes.
The next shot here is a shot that we got from the D23, or it was a sneak, one of them. And it was Baby Yoda, Grogu, swimming underwater. And now we get the continuation of the shot, because it looks like you got Mando coming in, picking him up.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what he's doing, if he's just saving him or taking him out of the water, but maybe he fell off that log. I don't know what happened there. Not a lot of explanation here, but he looks to be okay. So maybe it was just their training or something, or hopefully he's not drowning. My good Lord. I hope that's not the case. All right. And then we get some more of the action stuff here. So we've got Mando running in. That is definitely Road to the Hut there. So that's Jabba's son. You can see him there. He looks like
Jabba.
He looks like Jabba. Yeah. Maybe not so much Return of the Jedi Jabba, but he looks like a younger Jabba that from, what was it, the 97 versions that they did? But yeah, he's wielding two axes. You've got Mando using his cable to kind of like tie up his right hand there as he swings around here. And then you can kind of see the end of the shot. He uses that momentum to pull up. And then I'm assuming he's going to try to use that to choke him out, because he looks like he's about to jump on Rhoda's back. But this brings up questions about Road to the Hut. And let's kind of get to this right now. Like, I understand that, I mentioned earlier in that one poster or whatever it was off to the side there, it said Rhoda, as though he was being featured as one of the primary gladiators here. There's a scene from the last trailer, from the teaser that we got, where you've got Mando and Grogu as, spectators of these gladiatorial games, and they're eating popcorn and all that stuff. And I remember when we broke that trailer down, we actually got into like trying to speculate as to how do we go from them being spectators to suddenly Mando being part of the gladiator games themselves. Is this a punishment as a result of being captured by the twins? Did they say, okay, we're going to let you live, but you're going to have to fight your way out as part of these games? Or is there some kind of other subplot or something going on here that would make him go and fight Road to the Hut? Or is this the bounty? Like, is this what Colonel Ward asked him to do, just to go to Nal Hutta or Nar Shaddaa and actually go bring back, Road to the Hut? I don't know what the story, and this is where I said earlier, remember when at the very beginning I said, we don't have a lot of details about the plot. We really don't. Like, it's been cool and it's super fun and it looks great, but I've got a lot of questions about what the heck are we doing with this movie in terms of plot and storyline. But I don't know. What are your thoughts, I guess, on this, on Road to the Hut here and his purpose in the movie?
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm really not sure how they ended up from being spectators to actually now being part of the action. The only thing I could say, it has to be one of two things. Either he is who the New Republic is, Rhoda, that is. He's the one the New Republic is going after. So this is, essentially Din Djarin's mission, or the twins put him up to something. That it has to be one of those two. Or, I mean, obviously it could be something completely different, but that's the only thing I can think of. And maybe, when we see them as spectators, they're kind of like scoping out the place and seeing how, everything works and how everything is run, to see how, Din can infiltrate that and become a participant. But I think it's either, something that the New Republic assigns him to take care of, or it's something that the twins make him do to ensure their safety. I think it's one of those two things.
Yeah, I think that makes the most sense, at least with what we got right now. It's really hard to say. And let's not forget, too, I think, if I'm not mistaken, we did have a shot of Mando fighting the beast from the Dejeric table, right? The 3D, the chessboard. So this isn't the only thing that he's fighting. So I don't know if there's like different levels and, Rhoda's like the final boss kind of thing. I don't know. All right. Well, we get to this next shot here. Now, this is for me one of the more intriguing shots, because
Mhm.
I assume this is that same area, maybe, of where Grogu was when he was walking with the stick and he was meditating on that log. Just the foliage
Mhm.
and here looks to be kind of that same, a lot of overbrush and stuff like that. So I assume this is part of that same thing. So I assume they're maybe on Nal Hutta here. This character asks him if he's afraid. What was the exact line? Because I know it reminded me of Yoda on
Mhm.
Dagobah saying the same thing. Um, where was it? It says, "Are you
Are you
scared?"
scared?
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then he says, "You should be." And so I don't know who this character is. You can see Grogu, he's eating a fish that he might have caught, I guess maybe as he was living or learning from this person. Like in my head, and I don't, just stay with me. Like I don't know that this is really what's gonna happen, but I thought that'd be kind of interesting. But if there is some kind of force sensitive creature that lives on Nal Hutta that Mando takes him to get some additional training or get some additional help with what he's going through as a student of the Force, that would put this character in that kind of, mentorship role, leadership role, leader role, whatever, in helping him learn more things about the Force, because maybe Luke Skywalker's not available. He's out gallivanting around the galaxy and doing bigger things, and so he doesn't have time to sit here and dedicate with him, especially now that he's no longer part of that group. Right? He made a decision. He chose to go with Din Djarin, but he still feels like, hey, your skills need to be refined. So I say that because I think it would be really interesting if this character is teaching him things. And so when we see Grogu walking with that cane or when he's meditating on that stuff, that's all part of lessons or trials that this person is sending him through, as a mentor, right? Maybe a force sensitive mentor.
Yeah, I'm really not sure who this is and what Grogu is doing here. I kind of agree with you that it could be a situation where maybe this reptilian alien may not be a Jedi, or may not be a former Jedi, but just could be in tune with the Force, similar to like Maz Kanata, and
Hmm.
he could be giving Grogu maybe not training, but like advice on how
Yeah.
to
Right.
navigate a life being Force sensitive. This is one of the big questions I have when it comes to this movie: is who is this person,
Yeah.
and why is Grogu here and not with Din Djarin?
Right. Yeah. So maybe that's, yeah. Okay. So maybe after he's captured, he then has to go here to learn some knowledge. I mean, it would follow The Hero's Journey by Joseph Campbell, right?
Yep.
The call to action is he's got to go save Mando, and then in the next phase he meets an elder of some sort that gives him wisdom and usually gives him a object of something of some sort that he needs to use to fight before he goes into the
Mhm.
belly of the whale, right? So I'm not saying that's exactly what's going to happen, but it's Star Wars, and they tend to follow the hero's journey a lot.
Right.
So I
And
definitely see that.
we all know Dave Filoni is a sucker for the hero's journey. So
Yeah.
if it's going to show up in a Star Wars project, it's going to be in something that he's in charge of. So I agree
Yeah.
with you 100%.
Yeah. Again, reckless, I know, but we're just having fun here. Okay. So we go to this shot here, and this is of the dragon snake. So dragon snakes being the creatures on Dagobah. And then again, surprise, on Nal Hutta as well. I don't know why this thing is white, because they weren't this color. Maybe there's different shades of them. But this seems like, the similar to what Jabba did when he sent Luke and the Gamorrean guard down into the pit with the Rancor. This might be their version of it. Maybe there's
Mhm.
a trap door they opened up, and he falls down after they threaten to kill Grogu. He falls down into this pit of water, and now you've got him having to fight this dragon snake all by himself, similar with what Luke did with the Rancor. How he beats this thing, I don't know. He's got to have some weapons, I would assume.
Something, yeah.
He's got no force, so good luck, dude.
And I got to say, this particular animation here, it's pretty sick. It looks
Yeah, it's
pretty
pretty
good.
good.
It's
Yeah.
really good. And normally when you get like high level CGI effects in trailers, you could tell that it's not as polished as it will be when the film is released. But this particular CGI animal looks very good.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm glad they spent a good penny on the special effects, because it does take it away from the, not to say the special effects were bad at all during
Mm-mm.
the TV series, but they weren't movie quality.
No.
And you can see the quality upped here.
And I know that's been a concern for a lot of fans because, Disney hasn't come out and said this, but based off the budget that has been announced for this movie, it's actually the lowest budget for a Disney Star Wars movie since Disney's owned Star Wars at 160 million.
It's a lot lower than like The Rise of Skywalker.
Exactly.
Force Awakens,
it was lower than Solo. So,
oh, geez.
Yeah. And so a lot of folks are like, okay, well, that probably means they're going to utilize the volume a lot, which I don't have a problem with. But I know a lot of folks aren't real big fans of the volume and when they set the backdrops using the volume. I don't have a problem with. I can probably say I can tell when they're using it maybe 70% of the time, but it doesn't bother me at all because it still looks legitimate. But I know a lot of folks are not big fans of the volume. And then you have folks like Gilroy, and I forgot the young lady that did The Acolyte.
Yeah. Anyways, go on then.
Yeah, they had an option to use it again to try to save some money, and both of them are like, yeah, we're not using that thing. So
Leslie Headland,
exactly, and then Tony Gilroy. For Mando. I'm sorry, not Mando, Andor. And they had opportunities to use it and they're like, yeah, no, we're not going to use it. They wanted to go on location to film what they wanted to film. They didn't want anything to do with it. And because of that attitude, it can kind of get into the heads of fans and stuff. Oh, well, they didn't like it. I shouldn't like it either. But then that's okay. You don't have to like it, but from my perspective, the effects that I see come out of the volume are solid. So I don't have a qualm if a lot of the volume is used here, if they were able to keep the budget down, and maybe shift some funds to bring us effects like this dragon snake.
Yeah. My take on that really quickly is I don't have a problem with it either. I think when I do have a problem is when it's obvious and it pulls me out of the scene. Mm-hmm. Kenobi was probably the more flagrant of them, but they've done some pretty good stuff. Skeleton Crew had a couple that were kind of like the vault scene, and when they were on the moon at one point, didn't look that great. So, but this could be a sign that they're going more with practical effects, which is something they've done a lot of, and something that I know, like even these flybys that we see of the Razor Crest. I mean, those were all done with practical effects. Right. They weren't CG. So, it just, that may be ways to keep the budget down. But I think when you look at the story, if it is really kind of isolated to just a couple of different locations and they're not, again, gallivanting all across the galaxy with huge amounts of special effects, it feels like a very, I don't want to say it's an episode movie because I don't even think that's fair. I can see the arguments of like, hey, this just looks like, one really long episode of The Mandalorian season 4. But I definitely see where, because of what we're dealing with here, there's not a reason that they have to spend a ton of money on this budget. So that doesn't necessarily equate to being a bad movie either. Mm-hmm. You have a lot of great movies that don't spend a lot of money at all.
Right.
It's just about the story. And that's at the end of the day, what's, really, what we're looking for.
Yeah, and I think if the story is solid and the fans enjoy the story, I think any blemishes that we may see in visual effects or, in the use of the volume, I think will be easily overlooked.
Yeah.
I mean, heck,
to the comments,
Star Wars, when we watched the original trilogy back in the day before the special editions, all the starships had those horrible matte lines. We didn't complain.
Oh, yeah. The blocks.
Exactly.
Yeah, those were. You got to be old to remember those. Yep. Rob says, I see this as Embo takes Mando from his house and Grogu is left behind. Then Grogu goes to the Anzellans and asks them for help to rescue Mando. Oh, I can see that. That's a good way to put that. Paisley says, it is so pale and shiny, maybe sunlight or reflection off of Beskar would harm it. Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Like a vampire.
Yeah, maybe, because it does feel like it's hanging out in the shadows here. So maybe it's exposure to long periods of light hurt it. But man, that's a tall order right there.
It is.
Nothing.
I mean, that's not.
I hope it's not one of these things where it's not a Rancor. We have to say, like, at least Luke had the Force, right?
Right.
He used the Force to throw the rock, I guess, or he's just a natural pitcher. But hope it's not one of these like, oh, I'm gonna run around and tie it into a knot. That would be silly. Okay. So we get the shot here of him doing those little winky winkies with his eyes, little blink, double blinks. Look at that. How cute is that? And then we get this shot, which was another part of the teaser last year. It's Zeb kicking a bunch of stormtrooper butt here. He's jumping around. It's not, I think it was longer in the last one, but that's really all we get to see. But it's cool that we get to see him using his feet, which are basically, he can grab with those as well. You got Grogu using the Force. I don't think this is the same shot. It looks like he might be on that lush planet. Maybe he's meditating or doing some kind of a lesson, doing something here. But that's not this shot. This shot looks like it's part of the teaser. Do you remember when he had the little monoscope?
Yeah, the monoscope.
Looking through. It looks like this same kind of desert planet because you got desert and then you've got like grass, greenery stuff going on here too. So it's part of them scoping out that base. Something happens here. So maybe it is Grogu. Maybe he forces the nose down and it makes it flip, or they just hit something. I can't really tell. I tried to go slow motion on this thing and frame by frame on 1080, and I could not tell what exactly they hit here. But it's a really cool shot though, because you get to see them flying out of the land speeder there. You got this is the shot of Zeb saying, "I like this kid," similar to what was it, Han Solo?
Yep.
In the Force Awakens.
Yep.
Yeah, where he's like, "I like this kid." You got a quick shot here of Mando kind of doing a knee slide. It looks like he just took out that droid with a cape on the right-hand side there. So this may be part of his escape from, he got his helmet back too, if that's the case, but looks like he might be escaping out of the twins' fortress there. This looks like more continuation and mayhem of whatever they did to break him out of there. Cause I mean, that's one of the ships and it looks like it's coming down, like it crashes out of the sky. Takes out some droids with capes there. That guy just swallowed up. That reminds me of the shot from episode 1. Yeah. When the B-1s get consumed by the explosion.
Yep, on the Trade Federation
ship. Yep.
So I'm gonna call
Go
this
ahead.
right here, Albert. I think you were the first one in the world to actually translate that Arbesh and what it means. So I just want to give you a shout out there, give you the props that you deserve, and you can continue because this is a good one.
Thank you. Yeah, no, this was when I saw the trailer the first time, it was the very first thing I went to because I was like, they spent a lot of time framing that shot right here, framing the title there. And so I went and posted that this was Weathers Apollo, which is a nod to Carl Weathers, who sadly passed away last year. It went pretty like viral on Twitter and a couple of other social media pages, but that's not what's important. I mean, I love the fact that they did this. This is a very nice gesture to do. What's happening in the background is all of those monsters from the Jarg table are loose. So I don't know if this is like a diversion of sorts, or they've had enough of the low wages and unhealthy work conditions, but they decide to leave. And so they break out of what looks to be that Coliseum. You can see the other ones in the background. They're all there. The cast of characters are all there. And then you got, I hate Rhodians. If you watch the show or listen to the podcast, I don't like Rhodians. I think they're gross. I hate the fact that their fingers have suction cups, but I will say that the baby Rhodian is kind of cute. At least this one is. I've seen some ugly baby Rhodians. Like, I don't think Greedo aged well as a kid in episode 1, but nonetheless, it wasn't we get to see one of these guys. I don't know the names of these monsters. I'm sure somebody does. Dale, if you're in there, point it out. But you get the mom who picks up the baby, takes him out of the stroller there, and this becomes Grogu's vehicle that he uses. He jumps in there and punches it. I like that the thing goes down almost like hyperspace, punch it kind of thing. Yeah.
And to think that all of these, you called it a stroller, can move like that. That's crazy.
Right. Yeah. I don't know how much of that is the stroller and the horsepower it has versus, I would assume Grogu's got to be giving it a little like force push in the back,
Yeah.
Because I mean, that's moving for a kid. That's absolutely unsafe. There's not even a seatbelt in there that I could see. I mean, look at that thing. He's ripping up the streets.
Hey, he's in his element. He's in his element when he's in one of those things.
But interesting, they don't fight these things. It looks like they're just trying to get by them. They pass by this one here. and then Grogu flies underneath the legs of him right there.
Yeah, that's what makes me think. You mentioned this earlier that maybe their release maybe it was purposefully done by the Mandalorian as a distraction so they can get out, and so they're not interested in trying to fight these guys. They just want to get out. So I mean that's why I think that they were released on purpose as a distraction, and they're just getting the heck out of Dodge.
Yeah, and it's a full adrenaline, like full throttle scene. I mean, I know this doesn't do it justice, and I'm sure you all have seen this already, but the speed at which this happens is pretty quick. I mean, right up there with speeder bikes on Endor.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can see them; they're just flying through, the cruising through this thing. So it's kind of cool.
Yeah, that whole shot, that whole shot reminds me of Chicago. When you're underneath the tracks of the L, and you know how you have those shops underneath, and you have the tracks of the L over you. That reminds me of Chicago. That's the first thing I thought of when I saw this.
That's cool. And then we get the title, the Mando and the Grogu,
which I know that got a lot of hate at the beginning, but I love this. I love this title. I really do. I think it's Star Wars, but it's different, and I think that's what a lot of movies now, Star Wars movies especially, need to try to separate themselves from what we've gotten for years and years and years from the Skywalker saga. Make them similar, but give them their own feel to it. And I think this title card really does that.
Yeah, I'm warm to it. I'm still not the biggest fan, but I get it. I mean, it's pulpy. Even the font and the logo and the way it's spelled out, that's exactly what they're going for, and I totally understand that. It's not lost on me. But I don't know. I may come around to loving this, but I don't love it yet. I just kind of like, okay, it's whatever. I'll respect it and call it what it is. I'm not going to mock it or anything. Mm-hmm. It's the characters. I get it. And then we get our last comedic bit, which, it's him eating macaroons again. He's got a whole package of these things. These are the macaroons that were given to him when he was at school on Navarro there, if you remember from the series. And this hits home. Like, this was probably the most relatable thing out of the whole trailer for me, because I mean, how many times have we told kids, let's save the rest for dinner? Like, you're going to ruin your appetite. Right. Stop eating those. And what kid doesn't do what Grogu does right here, where he's kind of like, churned his side and going, I'm going to eat this one anyway, right in front of your face. So typical kid move right there. But oh God, he's just the cutest thing, isn't he?
And look, you mentioned this earlier. You can see that chainmail armor underneath there, right by his neck.
Yeah, you can
see it there. So obviously we knew he was going to still have it, but that confirms that it's still there.
Yeah, good call. I didn't even notice that. So, and then we get Forge Frymax, which you and I have been talking about how we're going to see this movie with FanForce Austin. I'd love to do. I'm going to see this in regular theaters and all that, but I definitely have to get an IMAX viewing in before this thing leaves the theaters. Like, it's going to have to happen.
Yeah, I'd like to see it in IMAX first, especially since is this the first Star Wars movie that was filmed for IMAX? I know they've screened the Star Wars movies in IMAX, but I don't recall if there's been another Star Wars movie where it was actually filmed with IMAX cameras.
Oh, yeah, that's a good question, because they all had IMAX releases.
They did, right?
The trilogy did, Solo did. Even Rogue One,
right? But they were cool. They were cool to see on an IMAX screen, but you could tell the aspect ratio was off.
The aspect ratio was off. Yeah, exactly. But this one was actually, you're right, it was filmed with IMAX cameras. So so that's different.
Exactly, and so that's why we talked about it briefly, with the group earlier, that hey, it's filmed for that. We need to try to find a good place to see this in IMAX on opening night.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Someone will have to chime in on that one too, because I'm not exactly sure if this is the first one that's.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. Yeah, there could have been another one, but as far as I remember, I think this is the only one that was actually filmed for IMAX, or forged for IMAX.
Forged for IMAX. Okay, well, let's end it on maybe we don't have to answer these questions. Honestly, they're more rhetorical, I think, at this point, and maybe we can do another show on this. We'll get closer, but I was jotting down some questions that I was walking, and this is by no means all of them. I honestly could go on for another hour of stuff that still needs to be reconciled in my head. But whose Razor Crest does that belong to? We talked about that ST-70, whether that belongs to Zeb, or is it something that Mando owns? Maybe he's just borrowing it from Zeb. Don't know. Are the Hutts working for the Empire? right? They seem to be, I mean, you could maybe draw a connection based on some of the things that we saw in this, but they haven't really explicitly said that they're working in cahoots with the Empire. There's definitely both sides in this, and we got to understand how that works outside of just the bounties. What happens now that the mask has been removed? We talked a little bit about that one. I had another one in too, but will we see IG-11, right? When we last saw IG-11, he had been reconstructed from the droid head that he found at El Delphi Station. Remember, it was up there, and Mando was like, "Hey, can I have that droid head or whatever?" And the next thing you know, they show him, and he's now like what was he? He was like the marshal.
He's the marshal of Navarro. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, from what I think there's actually a figure release of IG-11 as the Marshal of Navarro for this movie. So there is a good chance we'll probably see IG-11 again.
That would be cool. And he doesn't necessarily have to be a part of the movie. Like, I don't expect him to be going on missions, but if at some point they do go back to Navarro, then we would see Grief Karga again. We would see IG-11 and some of the other characters that, I guess that's really all because Cara Dune's now left and done other things. So, but it would be neat to kind of see them. I had another question about, will somebody say I have spoken, right? The Kuiil kind of impact on the series. He's such a beloved character, and his sacrifice meant everything in season 2?
Season 1.
Season 1. Right, season 1. And so it would be cool to see, just if they're going to go down memory lane, like as they've done with everything else, why not throw Kuiil in there? We talked about, why were they watching the gladiatorial battles and then suddenly became a part of it. A question that I had too was, does this movie focus on the relationship between Mando and Grogu more than we have seen, at least in the trailers? Like, it's there, and he certainly talks about the child. He's certainly concerned about the child living on for centuries beyond him, and that he's not always going to be there to protect the child. But do we get anything more than that? Do they go deeper and get into more of that relationship between the two characters? Because I think that's something that resonates with us as viewers, and something that we held on to and came away with after leaving season 1, 2, and 3 of the series.
Yeah, I think we'll have to. I think they're going to have to touch on that. Obviously, we did get some tidbits in the trailer, but I think what we're going to see is the story. It might not be explained in like their own words, but the story as it progresses will tell the story of the relationship between Din Djarin and Grogu. That's if I was coming at this from with my own opinions and my own story, that's how I would tell the story of how their relationship is progressing, is through the story itself. So that's what I think we'll see. But of course, it would behoove Filoni, and it would behoove Favreau to not ignore or take that aspect of this part of the franchise lightly, because you, myself, and I know a lot of other fans are invested in the relationship between Din Djarin and Grogu, and we need to see that progression. Again, whether it's they flat out explain it or it's told in between the lines of the story, it has to happen.
Yeah, I would agree. It does definitely have to touch on it.
One quick question that I have, and then I've heard other fans talk about, is like, where does this movie fit in the timeline of the Filoni-verse? Because we have, Ahsoka season 2, and then we have that Filoni-verse movie. So we have to figure out where that is.
Allegedly, we don't know. Yeah, that movie's been not talked about in some time.
Exactly.
I think some of that might be the fact. I think you and I talked about this. It may just be that, hey, now that he's got this new role, they may be trying to see how this movie does, take an attempt check to see where this is at. And then if it does really well, then they kind of move forward. If not, maybe they call an audible and change gears and do some other things. But you're right. I mean, it's something that we need to understand, like, where does this fit in? And here's what I'll say too. Maybe we can just end on this. When I was talking to Gustavo, who's he runs a Triad of the Force, good friend of ours. I was talking to him about this, and he was like, "This, I wasn't really vibing with this trailer." And what I told him was, I was kind of the same thing. Like, I walked away like, "Hey, this is going to be a great movie. It looks like a fun movie," but it felt like there was something missing for me. And I think the way, now that I've had time to sit with all of this, certainly talk through it tonight, I think for me, it is more about because I mean, for the hardcore fans like ourselves, I want to know what the bigger picture is. So speaking to what you were just talking about, that Filoni verse and that final movie, how does this fit into that? Right? Is this just going to be a fun, frolicking ride through the galaxy with Mando and Grogu and comedic bits and gags and stuff and like that. And that's fine. Like I'm all down for it. I'm going to stand in line. They've got me there. Right.
Mhm.
But I kind of do want to know and see, where does this fit into the larger arcing storyline? What's the weight of this movie? Is it going to have any weight? Are there going to be kind of, repercussions or ramifications of what happens in this movie that impact Ahsoka season 2 or impact the Filoniverse or impact whatever series they've got planned or whatever movies they got planned
Mhm.
in the future that happen in this realm? I want it to be meaningful in that perspective. But at the same time, if it's not, I'm not going to go, cry and make a big stink about it either. But that's the part that I'm missing. And I fully expect that to be teased out more as we get closer to the release.
Mhm.
We should get one more trailer. We typically do get at least a second trailer for all of the movies. So that'll come
Right.
30 to 45 days before the actual release. We're going to have the exclusive articles that are going to come out from Vanity Fair and Deadline and Empire and Collider. They're all going to have their exclusives. And through that, we'll start to understand more about the heavier material, the more weight that this movie carries. That's where probably we'll see it. So I'm not worried that we're not going to get it, but it does leave me kind of questioning where this kind of fits in all of that and just what is its place, not only in, proverbially in the galaxy, but in the bigger Filoniverse at large. So those are my thoughts on that anyways. But all right. Let's end it there, man. This was a great conversation. Thank you so much for joining, of course, Chris, for being here and for breaking all this down and bringing your insight every week. And thank you guys for all the comments and the questions that you threw into the live stream. I'm going to try to do my best here to give a roll call, but thanks. A special shout out to Alex Paisley for joining. Luminara was here with us tonight. We also had Reader Reborn, Rob, my Star Wars guys, One Up versus CPU. Dale made an appearance as well. And there was a couple other ones in here. Hold on. Who was it here? Oh, Paula 1966 was with us as well. Thank you, Paula, for joining. And I think that was it. If I missed anybody, my apologies. It was not intentional. Thank you guys for joining the chat there. Don't forget that this Sunday, Chris and I will be back to do a Patreon exclusive. We'll break down a lot of the news that's happened recently. And we may carry some of these topics over there as well, because I think it's relevant to continue to talk about this trailer and again, the movie that's coming out. So join us for that on Patreon. That'll be Sunday night at 9 p.m. Central, exclusive for Patreon members only. What else we got? But there, any final thoughts, any final words before we get out of here tonight?
So for me, I think this was the trailer that we've kind of been looking for a minute. Again, I really like the fact that they teased us with a lot of interesting scenes, a lot of interesting concepts, but not really giving us the whole story yet. And that's evident because a lot of the questions that we had tonight after seeing this trailer have to do with, okay, what happens here? What happens there? Because we don't know. And I think that if they can just kind of leave that mysterious aura around this movie when we come in to watch it, it's going to make it that much better. So bravo to Lucasfilm, Dave Filoni, and Jon Favreau for giving us a great trailer. And I'm looking forward to the next one. Like you said, we always get to, normally the second one will also come with the taglines, tickets on sale now. That's what I'm looking forward to.
Yeah. We got to secure our tickets ASAP.
Definitely.
So, looking forward to that as well. All right, Chris, thanks so much for being here. And thank you all again for joining us. And we will see you guys here on the next episode.
You're still listening? Wow, that's amazing. Well, I'm here to give you the disclaimer. Normally we do a big, long, drawn-out disclaimer thing saying what's what and who's what and all that other stuff, but I think you guys kind of know that Lucasfilm and Disney have no affiliation with us at all, and we have none with them. We talk about Star Wars, which is their property and all that other good fun stuff, but I think you can tell which is our stuff and which is their stuff. If you can't, well, then send a lawyer to send an email to me and I'll be glad to chat with them. Other than that, you know what's what, so that's your disclaimer.